No one in Black Hollow ever forgot the afternoon when two men decided to draw their guns in the middle of the main street and made an entire town stop breathing. Until that moment, the day had been unfolding like any other in the heart of the Old West. The sun burned against the dried wooden facades. Dust drifted slowly between the wheels of old wagons. Restless horses stamped their hooves beside the hitching posts. The saloon spilled out bad music, rough laughter, and the constant clinking of cheap glasses. But then, the news began to spread from door to door, from window to window, from glance to glance. That afternoon, there would be a duel. Black Hollow was the kind of small town that looked forgotten by God and the government at TSAM time, a handful of crooked buildings in the middle of a wind-beaten plain. Railroad tracks cutting the horizon like a scar of iron. A sheriff's office with rusty bars. A nearly empty barbershop. A general store that sold everything from flour to ammunition. And a saloon where people always knew who was drunk, who was lying, and who was about to die. In that town, trouble never arrived running. It came slowly. It rode in, on horseback. It stopped in the middle of the main street, and it waited for the right moment to explode. That was exactly how Silas Creed returned to Black Hollow. He appeared early in the afternoon, coming from the south, alone, riding a dark horse, covered in sweat and dust. He wore a wide-brimmed black hat, a long coat worn by time, and a low holster that swung against his thigh with every step of the horse. His face was as hard as old stone. A thin scar crossed his right eyebrow and ran down near his eye. Anyone who had heard of him knew that Mark wasn't the most dangerous thing about him. The most dangerous thing was his hands. Fast hands. Cold hands. Hands that had already sent enough men into the ground. Silas wasn't just a gunman. He was the kind of name that traveled ahead of the man. At train stations, cattle camps, and poker tables, there was always someone willing to swear they had seen him kill 3 men in less time than it took another man to light a cigarette. Some said he had fought in the war. Others said he was a bounty hunter. And a few more superstitious ones said he was simply the shape death chose when it felt like riding a horse. When he dismounted in front of the saloon, the street seemed to shrink. Doors creaked in the wind. Curtains moved in the windows. An old man sweeping the sidewalk stopped in the middle of the motion. 2 boys playing near the water trough ran into the general store. Even the horses, as if sensing the smell of danger, became more restless. Silas tied the horse to the post, adjusted his hat, and walked into the saloon without saying a word. Inside, the noise died slowly, like someone squeezing the throat of the town. Glasses froze. In midair, cards stopped being dealt. A woman leaning on the upstairs railing stood perfectly still, watching. The piano player, too nervous to continue and too afraid to stop completely, hit 2 crooked notes and abandoned the keys. Silas walked to the bar with the sound of his spurs scratching across the wooden floor. Behind the counter, Martha Quinn, the owner of the saloon, didn't show fear. She was a woman with a firm face, tied back hair, and eyes used to seeing blood spilled without losing. Composure. She slowly wiped a glass and looked at him the way someone looks at a familiar. Storm, you took your time coming back, she said. Silas placed his hands on the bar. I didn't come back. I came to finish something. The sentence fell over the room like molten lead. Martha didn't ask what. She already knew. Almost everyone then knew. Because in Black Hollow there were stories that never died. They simply waited for the right moment to crawl out of the grave. 5 years earlier, when the town still had more hope than tombstones, Silas Creed and Owen Mercer had been inseparable. They rode together, gambled together, sottogeter. They had crossed deserts, escorted shipments, hunted men, and survived sandstorms that would have driven ordinary people mad. Wherever one appeared, the other wasn't far away. Some called them brothers, even though they shared no blood. But friendship in the Old West was worth less than gold when pride, fear, and betrayal entered the room. No one knew the full story, and maybe no one ever would. What people repeated, in different versions, was that one night a shipment disappeared. A lot of money vanished, with it, and two men who had once trusted each other with their lives left the same road wanting to see the other one dead. After that, Silas left. Owen Staged, and Owen Mercer was the man who appeared at the top of the saloon stairs a few seconds. After Silas ordered a bottle of whiskey, he came down slowly, step by step, as if giving fear time to grow. He was taller than Silas, broader in the shoulders, with a short beard and gray strands beginning to invade his face. He wore a brown vest over a light shirt, a tin star pinned to his chest, and a revolver with a white handle hanging at his hip. Now he was the sheriff of the town, but no one there was fooled. Testar Adden, T. erased the man he used to be. Maybe it had only given him a more respectable excuse to keep carrying a gun. When Owen stopped on the last step, the entire room was already holding its breath. "You picked a bad day to walk in here," Owen said. Silas slowly turned his head, "And you picked an even worse disguise." Owen stepped forward. "I've buried men for less." Silas took the bottle, poured a finger of whiskey, and drank it as if he had all the time in the world. Then dig another hole. That was the moment everyone understood there would be no long conversation. No handshake. No forgiveness. There would be street, sun, dust, and gunfire. Owen looked around, noticing the people frozen in place. Each one turned into an unwilling witness of what was about to happen. Then he looked at Martha and said quietly, "Get everyone out of here." No one needed to hear it twice. Chairs scraped. Boots hurried across the wooden floor. Men stepped away sideways, unwilling to turn their backs on danger. Women gathered their skirts and slipped out through side doors. The piano player was one of the first to leave. Within seconds, the saloon was empty. But the town didn't leave. In fact, it moved closer. Because that's what people do when death sets an appointment. On the main street, doors opened just enough for a face to appear. Windows filled with silent silhouettes. Shopkeepers closed half their shutters, leaving narrow gaps to watch through. The blacksmith stepped out with his apron still covered in coal. The priest stood on the church steps holding his hat against his chest. Two women clutched each other near the fabric store. Even the drunkards, who usually argued over coins, went quiet. Black Hollow had become an audience. Silas walked outside first. Owen followed. They stepped off the wooden sidewalk and stood in the wide street beneath the harsh afternoon sun. Dust drifted between them like a restless ghost. The wind blew from the desert, bringing that strange silence that only exists before a gunshot. No one dared to interfere, because in the Old West, sometimes the law stopped exactly where a wounded man's honor begun. They stood facing each other a few steps apart. Sunlight flashed on the metal of their holsters. A stray dog ran past the water trough and disappeared behind the general store. Somewhere in the distance, a train whistle cried long and low, like it was announcing the arrival of something terrible. Silas broke the silence. "I heard you've been telling people I stole that gold." Owen didn't blink. "Because you did. 3 men died that night. Because you shot first." Owen's jaw tightened. Silas narrowed his eyes, and the scar across his brow seemed deeper. The town listened to every word like it was hearing a confession dragged out of hell. "I came back," Silas continued, "because I carried that dirt long enough you turned my name into a dirty legend. Said I? Killed for greed. Said I? Ran like a rat. And while you were doing it, you pinned a star on your chest and started pretending to be a righteous man." Owen answered without raising his voice. "I stayed to fix the town you helped ruin." "No," Silas said, stepping forward. "You stayed because it was easier to lie to the living than face the dead." The words struck Owen like a punch. For the first time, his face changed, not wheat fear, wheat memory. Then came the sentence that made even the wind seem to stop. "Tell them about Daniel Rowe." Some people on the street exchanged uneasy looks. The name still existed in the town's memory. Daniel Rowe had been the third man in that old partnership. Young, loyal, fast, with a gun, but slow to suspect betrayal. He had been found dead near the railroad tracks 5 years earlier with a bullet in his chest and the gold missing. Owen's hand tightened near his holster. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I know exactly." Silas' voice dropped lower, more dangerous. "Daniel discovered you. Were planning to sell the shipment behind our backs. Discovered you had a deal with men in Amarillo. And when he tried to stop it, shut up, you shot him. A murmur spread across the street like dry wind through dead grass. Martha Quinn closed her eyes for a moment. The priest quietly made the sign of the cross. Owen finally raised his voice. He drew first. Silence. Small, but enough. Enough for everyone to understand. Enough for the truth, buried 4 or 5 years, to finally show its face. Silas nodded slowly. So that's what it was. Owen realized too late what he had done. Too late to take the words back. Too late to remain just the tired sheriff of a forgotten town. Now he was only a man cornered by his own guilt. I didn't have a choice, Owen said. His voice cracked. That shipment was worth more than anything we'd ever seen. More than this miserable town. More than any life lost in the dust. And that's why I came back, Silas answered. Not for the gold. Not for my name. I came back for Daniel. The wind lifted small spirals of dust between them. The duel was no longer about reputation. It had become a sentence. Owen drew first. Eat was fast. Fast enough to pull a muffled scream from someone watching through the hotel window. The revolver flashed from the holster. The gunshot tore through the afternoon and echoed off the wooden buildings. But Silas was already moving. His body shifted half a step sideways. Owen's bullet tore past his coat. In the same motion, Silas' hand dropped, caught the grip of his revolver, and drew with almost unnatural speed. 2 shots exploded in the street. Horses jerked violently against the posts. A window shattered somewhere. Dust leaped from Tiburon. For a second, no one knew who had been hit. Then Owen Mercer staggered. The revolver slipped from his fingers and fell into the dirt. He looked down at the blood, spreading across his shirt. He stepped back once, then again, as if trying to deny what his own body already knew. His knees failed, and the man who had carried both a star and a lie for years collapsed in the middle of the street of Black Hollow. The town remained frozen. Silas still stood there, his revolver smoking faintly. Owen looked up at him one last time. There was pain in his eyes, but also something else. Exhaustion, the exhaustion of a man who had defended a false story for too long. He was going to turn us in, Owen whispered. Daniel was going to ruin everything. Silas walked closer, stopped above him. No, he said. He was going to stop you from becoming this. Owen tried to answer, but the blood was already drowning his voice. His eyes lost focus. His chest rose once, 10 again, and then nothing. Sheriff Owen Mercer died looking at the man he tried to bury along with the truth. For a few seconds, nobody moved. The church bell rang once in the wind. Martha Quinn stepped forward. The priest followed. People slowly left their doors and windows. Silas holstered his gun. There was no triumph on his face, only the emptiness that remains when a long promise is finally kept, and the dead still stay dead. Martha looked at him. And, Silas glanced around the town. Now you better your sheriff, he said, and decide which story you're going to tell. He mounted his horse and rode south, and as the sun sank behind the desert, the street of Black Hollow returned to being just another forgotten road of the Old West. But everyone who had been there would remember the same thing. Not the gunshot, not the fall, not even the truth. What they remembered was the silence.